Well, we all grew up in the projects. I grew up in, it was called Mitchell Projects, and he grew up in Patterson Projects. They were about 2 blocks away from each other. I was like at 138th Street. He would be it was like 141st, 42nd, so it wasn't too far. Either my brother brought him over to the house, or we had gone over to his house. I can't, I don't recall exactly how it happened. Because he was always into a lot of different things. I remember one of the things, he had a skateboard, and he was into skateboarding. He had a lot of skateboarding magazines, and then I got into skateboarding. So that's one of the things that I found interesting about him. He was always into different things. He was a complex person.
Was he a good skateboarder?
I think so. Yeah, he was pretty good. It was it was a passing fad. When you're young, you get into different things, but that was one of the things that he was into at that age, anyway.
So you were showing me the apartment that his parents lived on. It was on the first floor, and you'd say he'd go out the back door there.
Yeah, because the school was across the way, so he would go out the back door, and it was literally across the street.
You were saying at times it could be pretty rough. That you were saying even that in that one walkway that the dealers would line up, or.
Yeah, well, you could see outside the window by the fence that I think it was in the 80s or early 90s when the crack epidemic was really rampant. You could see the people lining up to buy drugs off of the dealer right there in broad daylight in the middle of the complex. It was really surreal. We would just look out the window and shake our heads like, it's crazy. And the cops would go by and they didn't do anything. I guess the community was so out of control that the cops didn't even want to get involved.
Well, you were telling me one time actually you were walking down the street and saw a shooting, and.
Yeah, we were coming from the movies and it was kind of late. So usually we would get off on the 6 train, the stop where I live, but at that time the 6 train wouldn't stop there. So you would have to take the 4 train, which is a little further. So we were cutting to his complex and we heard gunfire, gunshots. And then there was about 4 of them, and they started running in our direction. And Joey turned around to run, but I told him not to run because I didn't want to get confused with the people who were doing the shooting. So I told him, don't run. Let's just try to walk, as fast as we can. And the guys actually brushed up against us. They were so close, and you could see they had the weapons in their hands. They had the guns and stuff. So my concern was, we had seen their faces. I didn't want them to think, oh, these guys are witnesses. So I didn't want them to come shooting at us, but it was kind of scary though.
So how old were you then, would you say?
I think that was, I would probably say I was probably 14 maybe, 13, 14.
So that's quite a bit for a teenager to have to,
Yeah, there was another time too. We were in his house, and he lived on the first floor, and someone, I don't know what the situation was, I can't recall, but they knocked on his neighbor's door, which is really, it was right next to Joey's door, because they were like, the way the projects are, the doors are back to back. And when the neighbor went to look through the peephole, they shot him right through the door. And I remember it was funny because Joey dove for the floor because it was so close. It was just a matter of feet. So we were just sitting there talking in the apartment, and all of a sudden you hear gunshots, and Joey just throws himself on the floor. It was kind of funny. But it was a sad situation, but kind of comical. So, and it was weird because I had to leave the house at a certain point. So now I have to leave and walk outside knowing that, someone had just gotten shot. So it was, like I said, even if you didn't look for trouble, you would always wind up caught in the middle of things. It was just really strange.
Well, did you call the police with the shooting incident, or what the heck happened?
I don't think we called the cops. I think we were just trying to stay alive. We were more scared and in disbelief than anything else. We were just, because you couldn't open the door. You were so scared. So we were like, what the hell happened? At that point, we didn't know that the neighbor had gotten shot. We didn't know if it was just shots in the hallway or shots at the door, because we knew it was close because you could hear it, but we didn't know at the time what happened. Afterwards, when the cops came, that's when we learned that the guy was shot through the door.
Did he know those people? Or?
The person that was shot?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't get the full details. I just wanted to get to my house in one piece. I really didn't care at that point.
So originally he was your brother's friend.
Yes, he was my older brother's John's friend, and then he became a friend of the family's. My middle brother Frank, they also became friends. He was just, like I said, he was part of the family. We didn't even consider him a friend. he would come over for Thanksgiving. He would eat with us. I mean, after he had dinner with his family, he always used to like my mother's cooking. And he was always in the house. If he wasn't with us, we were with him.
Then you said at some point he became a real serious student.
Yeah, I mean, there were times, like I said, if he wasn't in the track running, he would always be in his house. We would call him out the window. He lived in the first floor, to come out to play basketball. Sometimes we played baseball in the yard of the junior high school, and he would just, he would tell us that he was busy. There were times you couldn't get him to come out the house. Or if we would go downtown to go to a movie or something, a lot of times he would say no, because he was so caught up into his schoolwork.
Did you encourage him about that? Did you think it was
Actually, at the time, I felt it was like kind of weird. Like I said, we didn't know anyone who graduated from college. We were just these kids growing up in the South Bronx. So I at the time, I didn't understand why he was putting so much work into it. I figured, he's losing out on hanging out. And that was more important at the time than, being cooped up in your house in a nice summer day. But obviously later on, as we got older and wiser, I realized that he was doing the right thing.
Well, what do you think moved him in that direction? Was it he was just naturally predisposed? Obviously, no one was knocking on his door. They were shooting through peepholes at people. Nobody was knocking on the door saying,
I'm pretty sure, I mean, he must have had some mentors. I mean, it's pretty hard to, as a kid, when you don't have that example around you, like, a parent that went to college or something. But I really can't say, but I mean, he was always very disciplined, like I said, with the running and with the school. He seemed to have a game plan early on.
Did he talk to you about that?
Well, like I said, we would spend hours talking about everything and anything. We would do a lot of debating and stuff, but he always, at an early age, he didn't mention being a lawyer. He just wanted to do well in school. I don't think that he probably got that towards his senior year in high school. But I think he knew that if he wanted to be successful, that he had to be educated. I mean, at that point, he didn't know what he wanted to do, but he knew that he had to get good grades and go to good schools and compete.
Well, you guys were, let's step back a bit. You were saying that he would, you talk a bit about how you say you'd be up chatting all night about things.
Well, one of the things Joey always seemed, he was, like I said before, he was always well-read. He was always reading books and magazines. He would always get the Sunday paper more than what issue. He would get the Times and the Daily News. So whenever I had a question about anything, like if I would see news and there was something conflict going on and I wasn't sure about it, I would always talk to him, because he always had, it almost seems he had boundless knowledge. He would know about every topic you could imagine, whether it be politics, sports, or whatever. He would know. He was always reading, and he just knew pretty much just about anything.
Was that unusual, would you say? I mean, it sounds like you're talking about did you know anybody else like that?
No. I mean, I always surrounded myself with, people with good heads on his shoulders, but he always seemed to be just exceptionally bright. Just like I said, he seemed to know about every topic you can imagine.
So he was nobody's fool?
No. He was always into fashion. We used to go to Bloomingdale's, which was definitely out of our price league, but we would always try to buy whatever we can, whether it was a tie or shoes. We would always try to get something. We would go to Barney's, New York. I remember the first time I went to Barney's was with him, and I was intimidated because they have doormen in the front, and you almost feel like you can't go in there, like they're going to stop you. And he always was confident. He would walk into any place, he didn't feel like he didn't belong. So here are these teenagers walking into Barney's, New York with like whatever, $40, and at first I would feel really uncomfortable in these places, but being with him and hanging out with him, then I would start, shopping on my own, and then it wasn't a big deal. And he would also go to Macy's, so we would go to these big department stores that, I guess we really had no business going to, because we couldn't afford it anyway.
Why would he do it, you think?
I don't know. I think early on like I said, he knew that, because even in high school he would dress preppy. He would have ties and trench coats. I think he knew early on that if you wanted to be successful, you also had to dress the part. He would have GQ magazines in the house and a lot of fashion books and stuff. So he was, like I said, he was well-rounded in everything. He knew, I guess, what he had to do in order to succeed. I mean, and then it stood out even more because you're in the South Bronx, and here's this 15-year-old kid with a trench coat and a tie and penny loafers, and everybody else is dressed in jeans and hip hop fashions, and here's Joey like a businessman. It's kind of funny.
Well, where did he get this?
Like I said, I'm just assuming he knew that if you had to be successful, you also had to dress the part.
So I take it you were saying, you were telling me that your dad used to tell you to knock it off, you'd always be chattering.
Yeah, there were times he would come over to the house and we would talk to like 2, 3 in the morning, and my father had to go to work the next day, so he would come out and give me this look like, it's time for Joey to go. He would never say anything, because he didn't want to offend him, but at the same time I didn't want Joey to go, so Joey would tell me, your dad wants me to go, and I'd be like, nah, don't worry about it. So I would hear it the next day, but yeah, we would just spend hours and hours talking about different things.
What would you be talking about?
Just life in general, what our future plans would be, what it would be like to be married, politics, the neighborhood that we lived in, just things, the big news of the day, whatever, just different topics.
Is there a conversation that sticks out in your mind?
There was one conversation that sticks out because he was playing devil's advocate. I remember one time he came to the house, and we were watching the news, and they were talking about drugs, and he was telling me, I think they should legalize drugs. And I remember I got really upset because him and I, we were very similar in our ways and the way we thought. And I was like, how can you say that they should legalize drugs? And then he goes, well, what do you think about that? So I spent about half an hour giving my opinion, and like I said, I was really annoyed. I was talking to him in an aggressive tone because I couldn't believe he would say something like that. And at the end of the conversation, he starts laughing, and he says, no, I don't think they should legalize drugs. I just wanted to get your opinion on it. That's why I told you before, sometimes he would work under the surface. He wasn't always head on. So at the end of the once I realized what he was doing, then I started to laugh. And I said, why did you do that? He was just like, I was just playing devil's advocate. I wanted to see where your mind was at. So that's the type of individual he was.
But you felt you could always trust him? Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, I knew pretty much all that there was to know about him, and he certainly knew all, as they say, my secrets or whatever. I mean, I definitely trusted him. Like I said, he was family. I don't even consider him a friend.
There must have been a lot of temptation. I mean, we're talking about the Bronx in the 70s and 80s when hip-hop was, and crack, and
right.
A lot of temptations. I mean, did you feel that yourself? Do you think he felt it? How'd you stay out of it?
Well, for us, like I said, for me, it was I had really good parents, and I'm sure it was the same for him. There was never a temptation for me, It was like I said, we would look out the window and see these people ruining their lives, and you would see girls in the building that were attractive and then got into drugs, and they would just be, skinny, and then all of a sudden they weren't attractive. So to us, it was never a temptation. We were always away from that. Like I said, he dressed a certain way, even though he was surrounded by all these things, he would never dress the part. So the mentality was never there. We would always, and another thing, my parents wouldn't let me stay out till all hours of the night. So having strict parents definitely helped. I mean, it's a crapshoot. I mean, I knew friends that also had strict parents, and they went the wrong way. But, I guess having good friends like him and good parents, it's a combination of everything.
Talking to you makes me think, what was your conception of the law then? I mean, you see all this stuff going on, shootings, the drug dealing, the cops going by. What do you think he felt about the law? He went on to become a prosecutor, and, we have reason to believe he thought he could really help people. Did he think that was the rule that was the purpose of the law, of the police, of the courts?
Well, I'm sure. I mean, we saw it at the worst level. Back, like I said, it was, I believe, the late 80s, early 90s, where it was just the worst I've ever seen in the city. So in a way, you couldn't even blame the cops, because it was almost like there was nothing they could do. And it got to the point where it became a federal issue. You would see federal agents doing raids in the mornings. They would come with all this gear. I mean, it was just so bad back then. It's just undescribable. There were shootouts every day. I mean, I would hear it from my window. I would see it from my window. People, because I live right across the street from the precinct, and people were getting shot right in front of the precinct, literally. So, I mean, that showed you the lack of respect that was going on at the time. It was crazy. It was just crazy.
So it's not like you could have a conversation about, well, this is what needs to be done. It was just so over the top crazy.
Yeah, it was just over the top. You couldn't even imagine what could be done. I mean, because it was always bad. There's certain levels. I mean, you grew up in the South Bronx, whatever. There's a lot of crime, there's drugs, but like I said, once you see people dealing drugs out in broad daylight and that people are lining up to buy, their supply, whatever, it was unreal. We were just, like I said, we would look at each other and just shake our heads. It's like, is this a movie? I mean, it was really surreal. You're looking at it, but you can't believe it.
Well, do you think he wanted to help these people?
I think he wanted to help the community in general. I think he just, that was just part of him. He just wanted to change things, to make things better.
You were telling me before that he was a fan of John Kennedy.
Yeah, he was a big fan of John Kennedy's. He had a couple of books, and I guess he molded himself after that. I guess maybe that's where he got the clothing from. I don't know, but it was like I told you, being around him. Sometimes I was in awe of him, even though he was my friend. It was sort of like being, I guess, around a celebrity. He was just so bright, and the way he dressed, and so I started to emulate that. I started to dress with the slacks, and I remember his father used to cuff our pants for us. We used to buy like pleated pants and stuff, and his father would do the cuffing for us, so we wouldn't have to take it to the tailor.
Talk a bit about what it was like visiting his place. When you talked about how he'd come over to your place. Did you ever go over to his?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time there. He was always into cats. He had cats in the house. I don't remember the names and stuff, but he was always into cats. And pretty much we did the same thing. Listen to music, buy tapes, at the time tapes, records, whatever, and just talk, whatever. His younger brother, his name is David. His father, he worked in restaurants. Like I said, what particular restaurants, I don't really recall. And his mother was a stay-at-home mom.
Was it a friendly atmosphere to be in?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we were all like family. I mean, so it wasn't, I didn't feel uncomfortable in his house at all. It was just, just make sure I left at a decent hour.
What was their interaction? Would they be joking?
No, they basically left us to ourselves. Like, when I came over, they would, how you doing, Danny? His father would ask me how was school, whatever. But then they would just pretty much go to their room and let, me and Joy talk and listen to music or whatever.
What were those apartments like? Was it like a two-bed? Were they two-bed?
He had a two-bedroom. He shared it with his brother, and I lived in a three-bedroom. Since there was three brothers, we needed a bigger apartment.
So what? Then there's a kitchen, a living room, a little.
Yeah, kitchen, living room, and the two bedrooms.
What were describe the personalities of his mom and dad?
His mother was she was like shy. She was more to herself, and the father, he was a little more outgoing.
And I just saying she's black and the
he's Filipino.
Where did they meet?
That I don't recall. I don't remember. I know I had asked and they had told me the story, but it's just such a long time ago. I don't remember.
So actually, he's half Asian. He was half Filipino.
Half Filipino. Mm-hmm.
So was that Spanish descent, or did you talk about that?
No, because I think he, being that he was dark skinned, I think he related more to being black and dealing with the racism and that part of it. Because if you didn't meet his father, you would never know that he was. I guess by the name maybe gave it away, Luna. But other than that.
Was his father light skinned?
Yeah, very light skinned.
Did he talk? You must have talked about the whole racial.
With Joey?
Yeah.
Again, these are conversations that occurred like maybe 20, 25 years ago. Specifically, I couldn't really tell you what we spoke about, but I know he was definitely aware of racism and how it affected, his life and everyone in this country.
So what were you telling me? He had books in his closet, or he was?
Yeah, the linen closet. The linen closet was full of books and magazines and stuff like that. And because I remember every time he would get a book, he would open the closet. It was just from top to bottom, no linen, just books.
Did you have a favorite writer?
I really can't recall. No, I mean, like I said, he read so many different things and so many different topics. I don't recall him one specific author sticking out.
What do you suppose got him going?
I guess his surroundings, seeing, like I said, seeing so many negative things. I mean, all you had to do was look out the window and you're seeing crimes are being committed right in front of you. I mean, I think that anybody in their right mind doesn't want to stay in a situation like that. So I guess he just wanted to better himself to get out of that situation.
You know what I mean? It's that expression, what makes somebody tick.
Right.
You know, and it's hard. You're kind of describing somebody that's inventing themselves
Right.
in this environment that there's no antecedent for. There's no, you know, real role model
Right.
in real life.
Yeah. Well, it's like I told you before too. It's really, you have to live in that environment in order to really get a full appreciation of how difficult it is. If you walk through or you're filming for a day, you figure, well, it's not that bad around here, you know, especially during the daytime where the kids are in school. I mean, you really have to live there and go to the schools, and it's a really oppressive environment. And it's like I told you before, there was no bookstores. There's really nothing for the kids to do. I mean, now with the schools, they have a lot of after-school programs and stuff. But it was really an oppressive environment, and so there really wasn't much outlet. And if you hung out outside and in front of the building in that area, odds are you were probably going to get into trouble.
Which you said you never did.
No, we never did that. It's funny because a lot of times when I would be in my building and I would be coming in with my mother or my father, the people in the building would ask her, "Is that your son?" They were surprised that I even lived in the building because they would rarely see me. Because if I was either going to school or going to Joey's house, or we would go to the movies, we were the opposite of the kids that would just hang out in front of the building.
Well, no, you're almost describing this hopeless, you say oppressive, but hopeless, but then, you know, so I could see, you know, okay, you study, you get out, you try to get a job, but,
Right.
you know, what makes somebody think, well, I'm going to be a lawyer?
I said, I don't know. He always had that drive from early on. Like I said, maybe he had mentors that I wasn't aware of at an early age. I really couldn't tell you.
But that seems ridiculous. It almost seems like these are things he picked up in books on his own. I mean,
Could have been. It just could have been the books too. It could have been all the stuff that he read, and maybe he just knew that there's got to be something better than this.
well, what? But you say you never had any conversations about racism. I know it's a long time ago, but you know, what was that stuff that was going on back then? Tawana Brawley and, you know,
Right.
or you say he goes into this department store, he doesn't seem to know his place. Something had to have gotten into his mind that.
No, I know what you're saying, but like I said, there's no particular thing that I can recall that he said that drove him to that point. And like I said, we used to talk about it, but it was just, I know I asked him a couple of times myself what was his motivation, but I really couldn't remember at this point. It was so long ago. I wish I could, but I don't recall.
Well, the letters you have, he's basically telling you, make something of yourself,
Right.
make good use of your time, stay in school. I mean, it's hardly a mystery when you look at those letters,
Right.
you know. So the John Kennedy stuff, it's body, mind, and soul.
Mm-hmm.
What did that mean for him?
Well, he would always just tell me, you know, always try to stay active. He was always, you know, physically fit. He ran the marathons, was always a runner. He was always reading, so he always used to go by that. It should be your mind, your body, and your soul. I mean, he believed in being just well-rounded. I mean, not just being educated and then being out of shape, or being physically fit and being ignorant. He felt you had to be a well-rounded person in every facet, and that's why, like I said, he read so many different things and so many different topics, so he knew a lot about a lot.
You ever talk about God?
We did from time to time. I mean, I knew he believed in God, but again, his particular views, it was such a long time ago.
You once said to me, you said, it's really hard to describe his personality.
It is, because you had to, it's sort of like I said earlier, that you have to have lived in the projects in order to get a full appreciation. I mean, in order to get appreciation of Joey, you had to meet him. Like I said, the easiest way to describe him is like being around a celebrity or someone who's famous, because he was just larger than life. You know, the way he just carried himself. Like I said, sometimes I was in awe of him, and he was my friend, and it was just larger than life is just the best way I could describe him.
He was also good with the girls. I mean,
yeah, I mean, he was a good-looking guy. He never he never lacked for women. I mean, like he wasn't exactly I would say a ladies' man. He wasn't always like chasing women. He was more into like preparing himself. But he had his girlfriends
They liked him?
that I know of. Yeah.
What, can you expound? What do you think? Was the whole package? They thought he was good looking, he was smart?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, he was, I mean, pretty hard not to like. I mean, he was athletic, good looking. I mean, he was smart, well dressed. So, like you said, pretty much the whole package.
Would they throw himself at him? Or?
No, I mean, he wasn't a beetle, but, but like I said, he was, you know, he had his girlfriends.
And what was the story you were telling me about the girl and comparing him to Michael Jackson?
Yeah, one time we were going downtown. We were on a subway, and he had a resemblance to Michael Jackson. And I remember like the girls were talking to each other, and they were giggling, but we knew that they were talking about him. So then the girl sits next to Joey, and she says, "You mind if I tell you something?" And Joey said, "No, sure, go ahead." And then she says, "Has anybody ever told you you look like Michael Jackson?" And Joey started laughing, and he said, "Yeah, I hear that quite a bit." And then she said, "Well, you know, in fact, I think you look better than Michael Jackson." And we just started all laughing and stuff, and that was that.
Well, did he hear that quite a bit?
Yeah, he did. A lot of people used to tell him he looked like Michael Jackson. He had, especially, you know, Michael Jackson early on. I mean, Michael Jackson has taken a lot of different forms, but early on when he was starting, and like about the time when he had the Thriller album in the '80s, there was definitely a resemblance.
Well, you showed me that picture of him dancing, styling, I think you said.
Right.
He was styling. Was he good dancing?
He was pretty good. He was pretty good.
You knew him through, he must have been 6th or 7th grade. You were saying he went down to the high school. He didn't go to the local high school. What?
No, he went to Printing High School.
What was the name of that school?
New York School of Printing.
School of Printing.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be a printer, you said.
No, I believe he chose that school because they had a journalism program, and he was into journalism also, and that's what I think geared him toward that school.
So he wanted to be a writer?
I believe so. You know, like I said, definitely different facets of his life. You know, as you're developing, there are different things you want to be, but I think at a certain point, he definitely was interested in journalism.
Well, you showed me some of the books. I think, what was it, Down These Mean Streets?
Yeah, Down These Mean Streets, P.D. Thomas.
Is that the Thurgood Marshall book? Was that from him, or?
No, that one, no. That I picked up on my own.
So, did he ever talk about black writers, or?
Let me see if it was anybody in particular. Not offhand, not anything I could think of. I remember not a black author, but the Dr. Ben Carson. He gave me the book because he was really impressed by Ben Carson.
I saw that letter, and he said that this guy worked at Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, right.
He was a great guy. Well, did you ever talk about Geraldo Rivera?
From time to time. I mean, back then, you know, because it was a Rivera, there wasn't too many Hispanic people on TV, so, I mean, it stood out.
Well, I understand his name is Jerry Rivers, anyway.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, he's supposedly a part Jewish, I believe.
So he went to the high school. Did you spend more or less time with him? You were actually only in the same school with him in high school then? Yeah,
it was for a year. I was a freshman and he was a senior.
How would you describe him? Was he popular in high school? Was he?
Yeah, he was pretty popular. He was, you know, again, dressed in his preppy fashions, his ties and his overcoats and his trench coats.
So you showed me pictures when you took him down to, I guess, after high school. Well, I'm a little bit ahead of this story. He went to where did he do his undergraduate? He went
to a year or half a semester in Hunter College, and then he transferred to Fordham University.
Which are New York schools here.
Yeah.
So did you see him much then? Was he busy? Was he?
Well, he was busy, but I would always see him from time to time. I went to the Fordham campus a couple of times, and there was a baseball game. I forgot who it was. And I went there. We had played baseball over on the Fordham campus.
So at some point he decides to go to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That was for a law degree.
Correct.
Did this just come out of the air? I mean, you were obviously busy with your own stuff then. But
I mean,
at some point, is there some moment when you realized he was studying law?
Again, probably so. I mean, he probably mentioned, after this I want to go to law school. But again, the time frame is just so long ago. There's no particular conversation that I could pinpoint.
So you took him down to North Carolina.
Well, we went down a couple of times. I mean, the time that his father was sick and he had to come up, he, I don't know, yeah, he had left most of his stuff behind, so he had to pick up his belongings. So we rented a K car, I remember, because it was so uncomfortable because it had a bench seat in the front. It was just a bare bones car, so we were just laughing all the way down. And then, he picked up his stuff. And then one time I went, it was just to visit him. And I think I made like a total of 3 trips down there. I'm not too sure. Definitely 2, and probably 3.
What did he think about the campus?
Well, actually, I even sat in one of the classes. He asked the professor if I could sit in. I was just, again, in awe. It's like, I mean, how does this guy pull these things off? Again, I don't think I was even in college at the time, and I'm saying, here, this is a guy, he's in law school. Again, it was just unbelievable, all the stuff that he would do, and it was great for me because he would always expose me to different things, and again, places that I probably would have never seen if it wasn't for him. Definitely not the inside of a law school classroom.
Here in that period, his dad got sick, but also I saw some of the letters he wrote to you saying how he felt he could be working harder. I mean, was he super or that maybe he'd been goofing off? Or
Right.
Do you think he was super critical on himself, or?
I think he also went through a period, whether it's through the letter or through conversation. I remember that there was a time where, like I tell you, I was in awe of him. I think he was in awe of the situation. I remember him telling me one time that most of the kids in the school were like at the top of their class, valedictorians, or their parents had a lot of money and they came from, wealthy backgrounds. So in the beginning, I think he felt a little overwhelmed. But then as time progressed, I remember him telling me, at the end of the day, they're just people just like me. They just come from, better circumstances. But after a while, he got acclimated. I guess at first he felt intimidated by the situation. Again, you coming from Bronx, New York, and then you're meeting up with people who have all this money. The kids are in law school running around in BMWs, and he had a bicycle. So it can be a bit intimidating, I guess, for him. But like I said, after a while, he got over it, and he felt like he fit in.
You're describing somebody that doesn't feel they're at all inferior to anybody.
No, he didn't, and in fact, that's why I guess he that's, like you said earlier, that's probably one of his driving forces. He felt, fine, I came from where I came from, but that doesn't mean that it should hold me back.